Good morning, and thank you for start to AIPH for inviting me and for inviting me here to Chiang Rai, this beautiful region in North Thailand. I appreciate that a lot. I'm going to talk about how I look at things seen from a kind of an educational perspective. I'm responsible for the Royal Danish Academy. We have a huge education in architecture, and we try to make the future architects that are going to be part of this world. I'm from Denmark, a small country in the north of Europe. You can see we are surrounded by water. It's very much our past. We started sailing out in the world 1,000 years ago as Vikings, but today we are of course facing all the same climate problems as anywhere else in the world. We are one of the oldest institutions of architecture in the world. We are currently 270 years old. That's a lot. So we've been educating architects all this time. It gives a lot of responsibility and a lot of also baggage, good and bad, but at least we have some experience in how to deal with a changing world. You can see our beautiful campus, lots of old buildings, lots of old trees. Denmark is a very flat country. Our highest point is 147 meters. It's called the Heavenly Mountain. It's not that high for a mountain, but it is a very flat country. So that's why we are also facing all the same problems of water as you see in other places. Like here, preparing for this, I found these floodings from Chiang Rai. I realized that it's not long ago. We could have had the same picture from Bangkok from, I think it was 2011, where a lot of Bangkok was flooded. It's happening again and again. It's happening more and more often. It has to do with climate change, but it also has to do with the way we're building. We're making more and more solid surfaces, more and more concrete, more and more paved areas. So we are making it more and more difficult for water to escape in a natural way. We know this also from Europe. This is again from Copenhagen. I'm using that as an example. You can see we have all these canals. We are by the sea. It's very much like Bangkok. It's a flat city by the sea. Old systems, but also a very vibrant modern city. This is the inner part, medieval part of Copenhagen. And you can see we also have, of course, other problems. We have ice sometimes, although it's becoming less and less. I read the other day that we have now 21 days less with snow in the winter compared to what we had 30 years ago. So it's kind of like a third of the days with snow has disappeared. So climate change is not something theoretic, it's something happening already. So we might still get snow, we might still get ice, but our climate, our cities has changed already. It's not a matter of when it's going to happen, it is happening as we speak. What we're trying to do is to do some of the same as we saw before with the project from Bangkok, where we're trying to mitigate climate change by creating these green corridors, adapting, making the city more sponges. Like this is a kind of suburban area in the greater Copenhagen. And it's a project where you are trying to make a landscape that allows for water to be accumulated not in a technical way only, but also in a beautiful way, and in a way where it becomes an attraction. So this is actually how this was the competition before, and this is how it was actually built. And you can see that it's creating all these landscape features, all these streams, and it makes places for children to play, for people to entertain, and it's very popular. And you can say, if you would look at it in a greater context, you would also see a lot of these projects is now not only about landscaping, it's about rewilding, you could say. It's about creating something which is more wild again. So it's wild plants, it's less kind of landscape in a traditional way. It's more about trying to recreate nature in a state as how it used to be, also allowing for other species to be present, birds and insects and so on. I'll come back to that. Of course, Copenhagen is also a bike city. It's like Amsterdam. we are maybe 30–40% of the inhabitants are biking to work every day, so this is one of the main train stations, and you see that there are bikes all over the place. This is great. It's also something we do in the winter. It's bloody cold, but we're still doing it. I might take a bus when it looks like this, but otherwise I will also take my bike to work. The problem is that, of course, it needs a lot of infrastructure, and this has been built in the last year. That is part of this green transition happening in the city, is that you also try to make new ways for people to move. So it's not only about green spaces, it's also about kind of green movement, how to make a place where it's attractive to move in a natural way, so you also get more healthy citizens from just being able to move rather than sitting in a car. I mean, that would also be very possible to do in a city like Chiang Rai, where it's flat and you have a nice climate. It's a good city for biking, I'm sure. It can also, the green transition, be of more technical kind. This is a project by Bjarke Ingels group. Bjarke Ingels is one of the new big architects in Denmark, educated with us at the Royal Danish Academy. He's now world famous. One of the things he had made is this power plant where they are incinerating waste from Copenhagen, making it into central heating and electricity for the city. We have central heating for all buildings in Copenhagen, and also central cooling for a lot of them. But this is combining this power plant with a ski slope on top. So you see this big green thing here is a place where you can go skiing, downhill skiing all year round. It's a kind of a plastic mat, so you can also, but it's also a park. So it's a recreational space, and it works fantastic. It's open for the public. Anybody can walk up there any time of the day. And if you have your skis with you, you can ski down. So it's a new way of thinking about also kind of including other types of green spaces. Bjarke Ingels, when he started, was actually coming from, so the first thing he made in Copenhagen was this small harbor bath in Copenhagen. It's a very small building. At that time, Copenhagen harbor was clean. It has been clean, but nobody started to use it yet, because we all knew that it would be dangerous because it was so polluted. He made this small harbor bath, and suddenly everybody started to use the harbor. And today we have to patrol the harbor because people are jumping in the water all over the place. So it's a really big success made by this small piece of architecture, started this whole revolution. So it shows the power of small interventions, I think. But actually, if you look back in history, you will realize that was something we had before. We just forgot it for about 100 years. So if you see here in the middle, there's this kind of, in the harbor, there's this these square buildings. This is a harbor bath a long time ago, more than 100 years ago. You can see the sail ships. And it was a very vibrant culture. It was all over the place. It was big harbor baths for thousands of people in the city. It was before you had a kind of private bath. But you would have this. Remember, this is a cold place in the world, but we would still go here and swim every summer, or my forefathers would do this. The biggest place was this, in the central harbor of Copenhagen. It had 7 or 8 Olympic-sized pools in the middle of the harbor, plus it had one big one, which was twice the size of an Olympic pool, room for 4,000 people, all made of wood in the middle of the harbor. Fantastic place. And then we started to drain Copenhagen as more and more people started to live there. We started to pollute the water, and it all disappeared because we actually destroyed the environment for this. So this is also one of the lessons, that we cannot, whenever we improve something, we also risk of doing more harm in another place, as this one. It disappeared for 100 years and then it came back. Other architects in Denmark are like Dorte Mandrup, working in Greenland, which is at the moment, of course, under a lot of international discussion because President Trump wants to annex it. It's part of Denmark, but anyway, same with Canada. And of course, Jørgen Utzon, also a graduate from the Royal Danish Academy, who made the Sydney Opera, one of the big buildings of the last century. I use this as a kind of an example of, this is from the practice, the engineering practice, where they were investigating this. So they have to look at the scientific part of these constructions. How do you construct something like this? How do you calculate? You have to look at the practice size. How do you translate this into construction drawings and information on the site. But you also need to look at the artistic side of it. Somebody has to come up with this idea. And I think that's one of the key things, that the aesthetics, the artistic part of it, it's not just something nice to have, it's really essential to our world, that we get something that is not only pleasing but gives meaning to us. So architecture, or the built environment, is consuming about a third of the world's resources during construction phases and later during the use. That's a lot. And you can say that architecture, I would also include landscape architecture, is part of both the problem and the solution. If it's done right, it can contribute to the right solution, but it can also do a lot of harm. One of the things we know is that the population of the world is growing very fast. It used to grow a lot in Asia. It's kind of flattening now, and then it's starting to decrease soon. It's not happening much in Europe and North and South America. It's happening in Africa in the coming 50 years. So that's where we need the resources in the world. That's kind of one of the things we need to know, that the resources are kind of moving away from or at least the need for resources is moving around away from these areas into something else. It's also becoming hotter and hotter. This is temperature for the last 150 years. It's becoming increasingly hot. And we have this, we're using so much resources. This is a country overshoot day. We are here in Thailand. We are in August, where we have used the resources of the year, so to say. In Denmark, we have used it already in March. And on a global scale, we are using twice as much resources as naturally produced in a year. So we need to do less in general. That's a big problem, that we need to do a lot, but we need to do it with a lot less resources to make it sustainable. One of the ways we have approached it at the Royal Danish Academy is to use the Sustainable Development Goals as a framework to discuss it with our students. So we have asked them to relate to this. We have not said that they have to accept it, but we have said, can we use this as a way of discussion thing? For instance, like this one about water and sustainability, is the Greater Copenhagen in 100 years, and you can see how it's flooded. Basically, it's flooded. So it's all the major part of the city would be the same for Bangkok. If you look ahead, we need to do something. So can we use this framework to discuss this? We do all this, we make public exhibitions and try to discuss these big issues, show examples of students' works and researchers. This is from our diploma exhibition. You can see we have this diploma program called, for instance, Political Architecture, or Architect in Extreme Environment, and Landscape and Cultural Transformation. These are all kind of different ways of looking at architecture or landscape architecture. Sustainability is a big thing, like this one, kind of discussing the materials of the built in the industry, like the food pyramid, use less glass and steel, more wood and hay. But also kind of taking students to places. This is from, I used to head this program called Architects in Extreme Environments, where we would take our students to places where it was cold or polluted or hot or kind of extreme. Like here we were in Iceland. This is from a glacier. And we would take students and they would make this construct, trying to deal with, in this case, kind of steam coming up from the ground, trying to imagine architectures that would kind of deal with these natural phenomena. Or here in Svalbard in the north, kind of very close to the pole, the student creating light from his own body, kind of his heat from the body kind of transformed into electricity in the kind of very cold night. So these are kind of experiments trying to understand basics of nature and human interaction, and then they go back and try to translate this into buildings and constructions. Here we have another one from the Gobi Desert, where they would go and kind of look at the phenomena there. One of the things we see more and more is that students and faculty are more and more concerned about biodiversity and green transition. And like a lot of academics are now thinking about biodiversity. For instance, this Donna Haraway, her thinking about and explaining of how invertebrates are a very huge part, actually most part of the animal diversity. How do we make sure that we're not destroying all these plants, all these animals, all these invertebrates in our process of kind of creating a better world? And I'm going to show a small example. This is one of our students. This is a diploma project. It's from the Department of Urban Planning, but actually it's a landscape project. It's actually, and that's very typical now. So it's called "What does the future of Danish production landscapes look like?" So this student is trying to understand how can we change the landscape, the production landscape, from being just big uniform fields into something which is perhaps a bit more sustainable. And I know that they are a bit difficult to see, but maybe you can see here that on the left it's the landscape as it looks today. It's very uniform, and then he works over time with a more and more kind of complex landscape situation. So what he does, if you zoom in, is he starts to take different plants. He draws his sections, so it's including the roots and the different kinds of soil, the different kinds of levels of biospheres around the plants. And he includes not only humans, but you see there's a bat, a pond bat, there's an owl, there's a bee. So he tries to include all these different species and say we need to create places for all of us, not only humans. It's not only about being green, it's about creating a world where we can all live together in a meaningful way. And I think this kind of thinking is what you see in a lot of students at the moment. They are looking for new ways to address this. They are not necessarily looking at it the same way as we're doing in our generation, but they're kind of looking in a different way, trying to draw, trying to understand it, and I think that's very encouraging. So maybe we are kind of moving away from, again, the Copenhagen example of a very expensive urban development in the harbor. Very expensive buildings, lots of bricks, lots of concrete, and to be frank, also pretty dull. I mean, they have the best view in the world, but there's not many traces of greenery or kind of human scale, you could say, to this building. So what can you do? Maybe you have to look in other directions. I took these two examples. One is from Chiang Mai, one of the old vats, and the other one is from Norway, an old wooden church. The wooden church from Norway is 850 years old or something. The one from Chiang Mai is maybe 500 or 600 years old. It's amazing to see two wooden buildings from so far apart, looking so much like each other. It's kind of down to the details, the way the roofs are made, the way you're kind of making the small pointing edges. It's like they were inspired by each other. But then you know at the same time that these people would never have met. They cannot possibly have met. But at the same time, they've developed an architecture that is very kind of similar because it's based directly on the resources from nature and trying to translate it into kind of a meaningful way of construction. In this case, a wooden building that lasts for 850 years. I mean, isn't that amazing in itself that you can do something like that? But of course, a wooden building or wooden construction can also be this one. This is a research project and also an artistic project from one of our professors, where they're trying to kind of investigate this weave called Kagame weave, and it can be made in bamboo or wood, but they kind of made the mathematics behind it so they can make any shape. And in this case, they are working with the K Bureau, an architectural practice from Kenya, where they try to. This is kind of a representation of some caves where they've kept a lot of enslaved people. So it's also kind of, it's an artistic and a technical approach and a new way of constructing it the same way. So there's also new ways. Another inspiration could be this one. This is the oldest oak tree in North Europe. It's considered to be between 1500 and 2000 years old. It is placed 10 kilometers from where I grew up. I used to go there in the morning very early with my family. We would go there at 4 o'clock in the morning to be there for sunrise. And it's still alive. It's not a beautiful tree perhaps, because it's not straight, but it's still beautiful in its own right by being very old and very specific. And maybe that's what we need to go do, to kind of go out and see these places again. But also recognize that these are kind of present because they have stayed there for there's been a kind of intact forest around here for 2,000 years. That's why it is present also today. And of course, this is also coming with the new solutions we need, like new landscaping, new energy sources. Again, Greater Copenhagen trying to incorporate these different things in the landscaping. But let's not forget in the end that it's all about humans. This is from the lakes in Copenhagen when they are frozen. This is just next to where I'm living. Suddenly a space here is a public space, it's kind of a recreational space. It's open only once, maybe every 5 years when the lakes freeze over, and then it becomes this amazing space. Or here in North Thailand, where in the same place you have your live festivals where everybody will gather. So if we can create these places where we combine nature and human activities, then I think we're onto something. Thank you.